Hello, everybody. Angel Arts here, and I have for you guys a very special episode. Um, Today, I am here joined with some of my LP buddies and other YouTube friends who are major fans of The Walking Dead, the video game from Telltale, and I thought that it would be really cool with the incoming Season 2 of Telltale's The Walking Dead for us to just sit down and share our thoughts and just talk about the series as a whole and maybe even some of our predictions for The Walking Dead 2 while we're at it. So just sit back and relax, and I hope that you guys will enjoy and maybe even learn something really interesting and new. We're going to start by introducing my special guests today. I guess I will, ladies first. I'd like to first introduce Kathleen. Kathleenmms is how you pronounce Kathleenmms?
Kathleenmms.
Kathleenmms. Thank you. The entire time I've been referring to her as Kathleen MMS, but it's Kathleenmms. She is she has her own channel where she has some very awesome videos, insightful videos about character analysis of many games that I'm also interested in, role-playing games from BioWare, and just really awesome stuff. So, Kathleen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your channel, and maybe some of the kind of games that you enjoy?
Okay, I'm Kathleen. I am a huge nerd. I love comic books and video games, and I really like doing analytical videos, kind of analyzing the storyline of video games since I'm a literature major and that's something I'm really interested in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what really drew me to this game in particular is the emphasis on story and character, and that's something that I really enjoy. I'm really a big fan of BioWare games, especially Mass Effect.
Yeah.
BioShock Infinite is another one of my favorite games. But yeah, that's enough about me.
Okay. Next up is another guy that you might have also seen, at least in my Dragon Age 3 Inquisition podcast video with Shot Lee, Reclusiarch, or David, as he also is known as. David, can you introduce yourself and also tell us about yourself and your channel?
Yeah, sure. I'm David, also known as Reclusiarch, as Hawk said. I have a Let's Play channel where I play lots of RPGs and action RPG games. Actually, anything with a cinematic experience, with good virtual acting. I love that stuff. Which surprisingly includes a lot of FPS games. So, yeah, Let's Plays, RPGs, shooter games. That's me.
Okay. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce to you to one of my Let's Play buddies as well, Lucky Jack 20. He and I are both involved with this gaming sort of Let's Play gaming community called County Line Gaming. And but many of you who have been frequenting my channel probably know him best as the voice of Ness from my from my VA Let's Play Earthbound video. So Lucky Jack, or Logan, as you're also known as, can you introduce yourself?
Alright, hey everybody, I am Logan, or Lucky Jack 20 as he was referred to, or as Ness if you really want to get to specifics right here. But on my channel, I was in a hiatus for a little bit because of schooling, but I'm hoping now that finals is upon us that soon I'll be able to get right back to it. And on my channel, I like platformers and fun. Like I'm a big fan of Nintendo games and all that. So I'm a huge fan. I was actually a big fan of Telltale games back with their Sam and Max series, and so I began following their brand that way, and I learned about Walking Dead through them. And what I'm liking a lot about Walking Dead is, again, just about all the stuff I'm learning from all the characters, but more or less what I can also learn about myself from the experience, which I don't think a lot of games are able to do. But so yeah, if you really want a cool platformer, all that, I'm your guy. And Vigi games. Vigi games.
Perfect. So
Nice.
before we continue on, just so that you guys out there understand the scope of this video, so you know what to expect, just a fair warning that this video will be probably overridden with spoilers from Telltale's The Walking Dead Season 1, including the 400 Days DLC. So if you have not experienced either of those and are sensitive to spoilers, just keep that in mind for this specific video. What this video is not going to cover is we're not really going to talk so much about the comics or the TV series. So for those of you who don't want to be spoiled about those specific media formats of The Walking Dead, don't worry, we're not going to be covering those, so you don't have to worry about that. I might do a separate video of my own that talks about more in length of the TV show and the comic books, but that's not going to be within the scope of this video. Okay? So, let's start off with Walking Dead Season 1. Kathleen, you were saying that one of the things that really grabbed you about these kind of games is the story. How exactly what led you towards The Walking Dead in the first place? Like, are you a zombie fan, or did somebody recommend this to you and told you that it was different from your typical zombie game? Just out of curiosity.
Well, I got into The Walking Dead, the TV series, because of my dad. He's a huge nerd as well, and he recommended it to me because of the strong emphasis on the characters. And so because I literally eat up anything that's Walking Dead related, that's why I played the game, because I also started reading the comics.
Gotcha.
And so I figured that the game would have a strong emphasis on story as well, and I wasn't disappointed because there is a definite emphasis on story and character development. So, yeah.
How about Lucky Jack and David? Like, could you talk about what led you guys to the game in the first place?
You want to go first, Dave?
Sure. Well, actually, I was not interested in Walking Dead at all at first. I watched I think season 1 of the TV series, and I was not really impressed. And and then this game came out, Telltale Games, The Walking Dead, and I thought, I think I'll pass on this. Comic style, not that much of a comic nerd, so I'll pass it, and I'll just watch Aguilar's LP it. And that was one of the biggest mistakes in my life. I mean,
watching my LP
game,
of it, you mean?
No. It was great. That's the problem. It was great, and it just blew my mind. This was a game that was supposed to be horrible and boring, and suddenly it was this like game with complex relationships with deep and fleshed out characters, and I'm like, why did I watch this?
It made a believer out of you.
Oh yeah, totally. So I won't make that mistake again.
Yeah, without like I said, without going too deep into the events of the TV show, I think it does tell a totally different story. Same universe, but the subject matter that it touches on in the game is very different from the TV show. So I'm actually not surprised that maybe if the TV show wasn't your thing, if there were certain parts, I think you were mentioning the whole love triangle romancy thing.
Yeah.
Wasn't very big on you, then I guess I can definitely see why you might enjoy the game a little more. How about you, Logan?
It was about a couple years ago that a friend of mine first told me about the Walking Dead series. I learned about it from a friend. Mm-hmm. At first I was like, we were still writing off the huge zombie thing of zombies had to be in everything. It was Call of Duty Black Ops zombies, and there was the Red Dead Redemption zombies. I was like, there's this huge like kick thing that all the media was taking. So when I heard about Walking Dead, I just shrugged it off as, it's just another selling point for trying to bring zombies into some form of media. But then he told me about some of the moments that happened in the series, and then that's what drew me to starting to watch the series. I unfortunately did not lose interest, but just lost the time to watch it as consistently as I used to. So I'm hoping to go back and watch more of it. Again, I followed Telltale Games from some of their previous games, and then I saw that they had the Walking Dead IP in that game. And again, unfortunately, I was working on so many other games and other Let's Plays at the time, I never actually had the time to purchase, let alone play, that game, which I'm actually now really glad that I didn't, because it now allowed me to do a Let's Play of my entire first experiences with it, which the Let's Play will hopefully be finished soon, or ready to upload. And This is coming from a guy who has just finished literally like a couple days ago beating the whole thing. I don't think a game has affected me so much as a person as to actually reflect on what I had done in the game as Walking Dead has. Like, other games I've done, it's like, oh yeah, we saved the world, yeah, cool, and all I just killed a couple bosses and enemies, it was fine, it was cool. But this one, like, every thing had to just be drawn into focus because I was impressed at how they did the whole conversation mechanic with time limits as a real conversation would work. It actually makes me want to actually now find the graphic novel or the comic or whatever and start reading that, because you say it was based off of that?
Yes. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Well, I mean, the characters are different. The environment is similar, I'm pretty sure, unless the characters were introduced near the end, because I haven't read the last, 3 volumes, I think. But yeah, there's some familiar characters, but I feel like the environment is more similar to the comic books than the TV series. It's a lot more brutal, I think, in my opinion. I don't know.
Telltale's Walking Dead game is more based on the graphic novel. Activision's Walking Dead game that stars Meryl and Daryl Dixon, that one is more attuned to the TV show storyline. Okay. And this TV... Go ahead.
Because I definitely saw in Telltale games the comic book art style they had of the mixed cell colors and everything.
I did like that. I thought that was a really good touch. But between the TV show and the comic books, they are similar, but are totally... It's branched off, and it comes back again. There's similarities between the TV show and the graphic novel, but for the most part, they're pretty different. Truthfully, the way I got into The Walking Dead is I think a coworker of mine mentioned the comic book series to me and told me it was awesome, and he was excited that they were coming out with a TV show in the next few months. And it was in my head, but I didn't really think about it all that much. And then my boyfriend actually told me that his students, because he's a teacher, recommended it greatly to him. So we watched the pilot. And within the first few seconds of watching the pilot, the first thought in my head was, wow, Rick Grimes is hot. And then after the first 10 minutes, I'm like, oh, Rick Grimes is in a hospital without a shirt. I think I'm going to continue watching this pilot. And then later on, I found...
piqued my interest.
And then later on, I thought, this actually is a really good story. Because going in, I'm not a big zombie person myself. I don't hate zombies, but I don't go out of my way to watch anything that involves zombies. But I guess what really drew me towards the story, besides what you guys have already brought up, is that it is less about the zombies and more about the people and the psychology of what different people, how they react and what they would do in a survival situation. Is that what makes it so different from any other zombie movie or zombie video game that you play is that the whole point of the story is not to find a cure or to kill all the zombies. That's not the point. The point of the storyline is that Rick's not trying to find a cure. He's just trying to survive, and he's just trying to make everyone around him survive as long as possible before their inevitable demise, which is kind of depressing, but I guess it makes very good, good drama.
One, I actually did not know there was a comic book before the TV show. That's kind of cool. And number 2, do you think you would have become as involved with Walking Dead if Rick Grimes was actually putridly ugly?
I think so. I think I would. Shane wasn't bad looking either.
I think they were, but they weren't.
No,
I like what... Okay. Oh, sorry. I like what you said about it being more about the humans. There's this famous line from the comic that I love. It's when Rick says... the zombies, the walkers, they're not the Walking Dead. We are the Walking Dead.
Oh,
and I think that's one of the greatest lines from that comic book, because the most terrifying thing about this universe is the people, not the walkers. The walkers are just one part of the problem, but human beings are the biggest problem.
To take a quote from that one woman, I forget her name. Was it Jolene from
Jolene
2,
from SO2.
that the dead don't kill their own.
Yeah. David, I think you were about to say something.
Yeah, I think one of the big themes of the Walking Dead universe is that how far are you willing to go to survive, and what are you willing to do to save those that you care about, not just yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
But others as well. And I think that's part of the TV series as well.
What I find really interesting about this story is that even though some people don't like episodic games because they're like, oh, I have to wait another month to play the next episode. But the reason I like that is because it sort of gives the fans an opportunity to discuss the game with each other without knowing what happens next. You get to talk about your choices. You get to talk about what their predictions are. It feels a lot like when you were in between books during the Harry Potter series, because you read a book from Harry Potter and you're like, oh, I have to wait however many months before J.K. Rowling sends out another book. But I love that break in between for the fact that I can just talk about the book with other people. And so I think the whole thing about it being episodic, I thought at least was a plus for the game, even though other people might find that a little annoying. And during my conversations with people, it's interesting because when they tell me the decisions that they make, sometimes it greatly surprises me, and vice versa. Like, I was telling people some of the choices I made throughout the game, and they were shocked because they were like, Hark, normally you're a really, nice and forgiving kind of person, even in a video game. Like, how could you? Because they were really surprised when I shot Jolene in episode 2.
Oh,
I did shoot her, and people were shocked at me for doing that, even though later on I was one of the very few. I don't think I have seen any Let's Player who did not kill either of the St. John's brothers, because I didn't kill Andy or Danny. But I didn't either. Okay, well that's good. But I have yet to see any other Let's Player, I guess, before you, Lucky Jack, who at least most everyone else killed at least the first one. But then they were shocked that I shot Jolene, and so my reasoning behind shooting Jolene was that if of course I would like to try to take the path where I can probably diplomatize or talk someone down from a conflict, but it's, at least at the time, it seemed like there was no talking her down. Like, there was no way that Lee would be able to convince her to not shoot at me, and since she was pointing that lethal weapon and talking...
a crossbow against two guys with rifles.
And explicitly talking about Lee's junk and how she would hang it up on a tree...
There's worse places that she could have shot you, though.
There's worse places. I mean, I was like, it's self-defense. She was going to shoot me, so I shot her. But... I mean, did any of you guys... Were any of you guys surprised with the decisions that you ended up making on hindsight, or was anybody else surprised by something?
Oh, totally.
Tell us about it, David.
I remember watching your LP, and I think it's in episode 2, where you go back to the drugstore to get some supplies.
Oh, that's episode 3, the beginning of episode 3.
3,
yes.
All right, yeah. And this girl comes running out with zombies all over her.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing your LP and wondering who would not shoot her. I mean, it's a mercy kill,
Yeah.
But then I started thinking, okay, and when I play the game, I did not shoot her because, short term, it's a good thing. You kill her and she's at peace.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. What am I willing to do to save the ones I care about?
Yeah.
If she's already dead, she's bitten, so she's dead. So if I let her live a moment longer, I get more supplies that can save me and Clementine and all the others I care about. It's a horrible decision.
Yeah.
It's a horrible decision, and I would feel really bad making it. But in the end, I just stepped back and did not shoot her. And being in that drugstore and hearing her scream outside, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But you have to think in the long term. I'm doing this for Clementine. So yeah, that surprised me.
it's hard to do that thinking about the long term when you have seconds to make a decision. And I think
know.
Yeah.
It's
and
just that.
I think that Telltale did a very smart thing about giving you specifically a time limit to make certain decisions, because you know, when you have to make a split second decision, you learn a lot about yourself with this game, because you'd
Yeah.
like to think it's very easy for people. I've seen a lot of people who've not only watched my Let's Plays, but other people's Let's Plays. I'm like, what? Why did you do that? You should have done this because, in the long run, blah, 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 blah. But they're
Yeah, but I
not.
can't plan.
Yeah,
that
they're
around
not the
that.
people. But like when you're put in that position, when the time is when you're presented with a situation, like, and seconds later you have to make a choice, like, and you don't have time to think it all the way through. You end up going with your gut, and
It's almost instinctual.
it's
what you
almost
do.
instinctual. So it's really hard for other people who are watching a Let's Play to say, "Oh, how dare you do that?" or "How could you have made that choice?" Because it's a totally different matter when you are the one with that control in your hand, and you are the one who have to make that choice in a few seconds. I love
And
that
I
part.
had the power of hindsight. I had seen this scene before,
Mm,
so with going in, I was gonna shoot her. That was my intention.
mm.
But yeah,
But even after knowing what was about to happen, you still ended up not shooting her. That's.
yeah.
Were you going to say something,
No.
Kath? Oh, I'm sorry, or Lucky Jack?
Oh, no, okay.
I'm trying to remind myself of the characters' names. I'm trying to pull it up because I, I have the worst memory of names.
No problem.
You can pull it up on like a browser or something.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna do that. But I think the fact that things were timed, and that the fact that we had so little time to decide things, that I think that's the reason why this made me feel more emotionally connected than even BioWare games. And even though I love games like Mass Effect, the thing is, you get so much time to decide things, so you don't have that pressure of this is
Yeah.
life or death, and you are confronted with what you instinctively do in those situations. And see, I always thought that I made like the paragon choice or the right choice, but when it comes to having so little time to make a decision, I often made decisions that I really regretted, and I had to just live with them.
Yeah.
And
You know?
and that's both the beauty and the horror of Walking Dead. Is a lot of the choices you literally are just picking the lesser of two evils. Sometimes there is no right choice, and you just have to,
Yeah.
because it is trying to convey that sense of hopelessness in those times. Because I guess falling back on what you were talking about, Dave, I did not have that hindsight going into episode 3.
Yeah.
So when that moment came, I was kind of shocked, because through episode 1 and 2, I was just, triumphantly going, I am not going to kill a single human being, because that was one of the main reasons why Angel Arts I didn't kill any of the St. John's brothers, is because it, like, in response to what's his name, Andy, the guy with the pitchfork, whatever, what he said to me, my response, I almost kind of found myself just saying, like, I said, yeah, the world's gone to hell, but I'm not going to be the reason why it is hell right now. So that was my reason why I didn't want to kill anyone, because I did not want to add to the problem. But
from the entire season 1, what would you say was your most difficult choice? What was the most difficult choice for you to make? I can go first. For me, it was the very last choice that you make in episode 5, where you have to tell Clementine to leave or to either leave or to prevent Lee from turning. That was the most difficult decision, and I was going back and forth about it. And I think this was one of those things where I don't think you were timed. I think that, or at least the timer was a lot slower for you to make the choice. And even today, like, I'm going to stick with the decision that I made, because I ended up telling Clementine to leave. I told her I knew that eventually she'd have to learn to shoot people. And she has before, but this is a little different, because you're shooting someone who essentially has been a father figure for this entire time. But I just couldn't. Yeah. I just couldn't get her to. I think the reason behind why I ended up telling her to leave is because some people believe that it's a mercy to kill someone before they turn. Based on the way I was raised and my, at least, personal belief system and backgrounds, I believe that once you die, your soul leaves your body and you're no longer at your body. So whatever is left behind is your body, and there's nothing left there. Therefore, if you become a zombie, it's not. It doesn't really matter if you shoot the zombie or not. At least that was my personal thing, and I know other people have their own opinions and their own belief system. But even then, after putting down the controller, I was just thinking to myself, well, I started having a little bit of doubts as well. So, what were your?
Which I think is why they give you so much time for that last choice, was just to weigh everything up.
Well, to add on to what you said, I actually decided to have Clementine shoot Lee, because I'm more of a cynical person. Like, whenever it comes to meeting a new person in a video game, I immediately distrust them. And I personally think that Clementine needs to harden herself. Yeah, I guess the best thing would be for her to preserve her innocence, but I feel like in this type of environment, that's just not possible.
Yeah.
So I feel like she needs to harden herself and protect herself from, getting close to people, especially because that can be a really dangerous thing in this type of world. So I felt like her taking the stand and shooting her father figure was a way of her, I guess, hardening herself and knowing that she's going to have to do that in the future, because there will be moments where it'll be life and death, and she'll probably have to shoot someone that she's been with for a long time.
Season 2 and all that.
Yeah. So, like I said, I'm kind of cynical. I tend to expect the worst of characters. So. Yeah.
Not always a bad thing, as we learned from episode 2, but
yeah.
Well, I'm going to continue on that, and I shot Lee as well, and it's mostly because I don't want Clementine to feel that she knows that Lee's out there somewhere as a zombie, killing people. And just putting him down, it's what he wanted. So I think that's one of the main reasons I decided to shoot Lee. But I did have another difficult choice, and it's the choice whether you should help Kenny kill Larry with the salt stone or not.
Yeah.
Because I was befriending Lily this whole series, and doing that would just betray so much of her trust. Yet, Kenny has a point, and he's probably dead, and CPR is not very effective against heart attack victims. So, yeah, I decided to crush his skull. And again, another heartbreaking decision, but I am slightly pragmatic.
And this was a decision that you made after watching me play it. So you already knew, you already knew what was going down. So
it was sort of a railroaded decision either way, unfortunately.
Yeah, but it's still very difficult to make.
How about you, Lucky Jack? Do you have a particularly Did you have a most difficult decision?
So first I'm going to say that at the end I also chose to have Clem shoot Lee. Again, kind of going off of Dave's side of it, was I didn't want any harm to come to Clementine, and even more, I did not want it to be because of me that any harm should ever befall her, and I just wanted to preserve that last moment or whatever of her seeing me as a human, as who I am, or whatever. But so for my most difficult decision, probably I'm actually tied. I can't, for some reason I'm stuck between either the choice in episode 4, whether you choose to leave Clem at Crawford or if you want to take her with her. I chose to take her with me, and in the end it actually proved beneficial because she helped save someone. And it's either that moment or episode 3 with Duck. That moment was
Which decision with Duck? I mean, there were a couple.
The decision of who should kill him.
I see.
Because everything was Kenny, it's his son. Lee, I don't want to betray what little trust I have in, is the fact that it's just horrible. Or see, it was three again. It was the lesser of two evils, and it was just an awful moment to see. To literally watch Kenny have everything ripped away from him, no matter what. And
that season 3. Episode 3 as a whole killed me. Like that was the one where everything changed.
Yeah.
And everyone I've talked to say it's always episode 3. Like even a friend of mine who's the most stoic individual I know with gaming said that even he choked up a bit at episode 3. And going into it, I was like, oh god, what the heck am I going to get myself into now?
Yeah.
And
I mean, it all.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something, Kathleen?
Oh, I was going to say, I did not like Kenny until, I think, episode 3, when I realized that he was the one that stuck with you, and he's, who you're going to end up with in the end. And so that was shocking for me, and because the whole time I was really irritated by his character, but I realized that he stuck with us the longest, and I think that was the hardest part for me. I was like, wow, I feel really bad for all the horrible decisions I've made and all the times that I didn't side with him.
Who do you feel should have been like that companion character that would have stuck with you through all 5 episodes?
I like that it was Kenny, actually. I like that I kind of made the wrong decisions and that I sided with the wrong people, and that it was a neat turnaround, I think. So, I don't know. Kenny ended up being more deep and more. He ended up being a better character than I gave him credit for at first. So I liked being surprised about that.
To answer your question,
I guess that's our moments.
To answer your question, Logan, about what was your question? Who do you think should have?
Oh no, who would you prefer to have been the companion character?
Oh, yeah.
Not to have taken Kenny's place, but which story would you wanted to follow all the way through if there was no horrible thing like when Lily decides to ditch everyone, or when I forget his name. Oh, whatever. Who do you think? Which story would you have wanted to follow through the whole 5 episodes, if not Kenny's?
For me, you mean to when you say follow, you mean following Lee?
Yeah,
I think anyone who saw my LP knows that I'm gonna say Doug because he was by far my favorite character. And like I would have loved to have had his character developed more, because I felt like we only got a taste of what Doug was all about. And the same thing with Carly too. If you ended up choosing Carly over Doug, and they did. I mean, and that's what makes their death so tragic, is that you did see so much potential with Carly, especially if you saw the romantic, thing blossoming with Lee. And Doug, I felt like there's so many stories that you could have told with him. And I mean, my biggest love for Doug stems from the fact that he provides something for the group that I thought was really rare, even more rare than someone who was a sharpshooter killer, in that he was the emotional anchor for the group. Like, I think Shot Lee said it best when she said that Doug, the best thing about Doug is that he's constant. No matter how crazy everything gets around, no matter how crazy all the people around get, Doug's always Doug. He's always stable, and he was always that emotional anchor that I think I clutched onto. And so when he left, that was the beginning of the big spiral that is episode 3, and for me especially, and I took his death really hard.
Now I feel so bad for saving Carly in the end of it.
I like
knowing that.
I like Carly too. I mean,
no, because I'll explain my reasoning was that I wanted to save Carly because I thought that would in turn save Doug, because I thought, hey, she has a ranged weapon that can shoot across a hallway. I've seen her take weirder shots before, but in the end the game didn't let me do that.
I saved Carly because I wanted to save the chick. I'm not gonna lie.
Part of me wanted to save the guy. I guess I should say that too. Go ahead, Dave.
And I was, as always, slightly pragmatic. She saved me once.
That's
so
true.
I saved her once.
That's true.
So.
Well, you touch on something really interesting there, Lucky Jack, about decisions and railroading and a bunch of things. I guess one of the critiques that people can say and have said about the game is many of the decisions that you make in the story does not really affect the flow of the story as much.
It just kind of switches out characters or something.
Exactly. What are your feelings or responses to that? Did you have a problem with it, and if so, like...
True. No, true. I understood, considering what the year was made and by Telltale Games, which I know Telltale compared to BioWare is a much more indie developer. We can consider them. So I knew there was going to be limitations involved with that. Yes, I felt kind of cheated out because after I recorded and played everything, I decided to watch back your Let's Play at those particular moments just to see how you reacted to them.
Mm-hmm.
No offense, I didn't watch all of the story and the dialogue because I already knew what was happening.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I felt kind of cheated out when knowing that no matter what you do with Larry, he was going to die anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing that, and I felt sort of cheated out because I actually tried to save him because I again did not want to take the life of anyone until they became a walker, and
same thing with Sean Green. Yes.
Sean Green, yeah. It was just.
Yeah.
How about you,
Yeah.
Kathleen and Dave? How about you? Like, what are your thoughts or responses to that critique?
Well, for me, it just still felt like my story, and I think that's what matters most.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like my choices really had an impact, and it did differ from other people's LPs. And I like that. So I don't really. It doesn't annoy me at all. Actually.
How about you, Kathleen?
I like what you said, David, that it still felt like my story. Even though I was frustrated at first when I realized the first thing I did when Carly died was I looked up how to save her. I was like, oh, can I replay this and save her? I really was starting to like her character hardcore, and I was just like, oh man, I really want there to be a romance between her and Lee.
Yeah.
And I was so disappointed about that. So when I realized that I couldn't save her, I was kind of disappointed, but when I kept playing, it still felt, I guess because the whole time it really places it really
emphasis
is grounded in you making decisions.
Yeah.
Because that's so important, I felt like it still was my story. I don't know, I felt like I put a personal stamp on it, even though it doesn't fluctuate that much. So
my response to that specific critique, I'm going to answer with something that I actually also said about Beyond Two Souls, because I think Beyond Two Souls was given a similar critique in that I think for me, the decisions were designed less on dramatically changing the story, but I think what the decisions were supposed to do instead was to allow you to define who Lee was, what Lee's, based on Lee's dialogue and based on his decisions, it defined what kind of person you're specifically was, and for me that was enough. For me, that was just as enjoyable as making my decisions actually change the story.
I think.
Go ahead,
yeah,
Jack.
I was gonna say, I think that is what I could say I liked the most about Walking Dead, was that it gave you more or less an empty shell with a backstory with the teacher at all. He was a teacher and all that, and he was in a murder case. But they did kind of just give you an empty shell that you could insert yourself into that world, and basically the whole game was creating that character development from the ground up.
Yeah, I think that and what I normally tell people is if they still are annoyed at the fact that their decisions might not change the flow of the story as much as they'd like, I would typically tell them, I think Telltale is trying to take that more to heart with The Wolf Among Us. Because at least after playing the first episode, without giving anything away, I think The Wolf Among Us, your decisions has and probably will continue to change the flow of the story a little bit more than The Walking Dead does. So.
And in Season 2, didn't they say that, kind of like Mass Effect or whatever, in Season 2, choices in Season 1 will change the story in Season 2 as well?
Choices in Season 1 will affect what happens in Season 2. So you will load you load your decisions from season 1 and 400 days if you also played 400 days. Those choices will be loaded into season 2.
So perhaps we'll see more dynamic storyline in season 2 now that they've seen how much of a success season 1 and its DLC were.
I wouldn't be surprised if they did that. Yes, I would not be surprised at all. What were some of you guys' we started talking a little bit about characters. So what were some of you guys' favorite characters? I already gave my undying love for one Doug. But
Love Doug.
Love Doug.
That should be a band name somewhere.
I mean, I of course loved Clementine.
Of course.
Yeah.
She was the moral conscience of the story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's interesting. I've read things about how people would often make different decisions when she would be in the room.
Yes.
And, her presence really affected the decisions that I made completely.
Yeah.
And, it gave us something to keep playing the game for. We wanted to protect Clementine. And I guess, I mean, having her as our goal really affected the story for me. So
what I was very impressed with Clementine while watching this game with other Let's Players is that there's a lot of people who don't particularly care for children at all, especially kids in games. A lot of kids in games have traditionally been annoying to many people who play games.
Skyrim.
And I just remember that a couple of Let's Players who have said, you know what, normally I hate kids, and normally I hate kids in games, but Clementine, I will do whatever it takes to protect that little girl. And so
That's me.
So I think it's really interesting that her character alone was so well presented, and the voice actress
the writing.
was fantastic.
Yeah.
But the way that they designed and presented her character just made people fall in love with her, that people who typically would not have fallen in love with her.
Mm-hmm.
How about your favorite characters, David?
Well, first off, I'd like to say that, yes, I'm totally that guy you just described. I don't like And episode 3 didn't really affect me that much when Duck died. But I would do anything for Clementine. 110% of the time. My favorite character is actually Kenny.
Interesting.
Not because he's the most pleasant, but he's got so much character development, just like Kathleen said. At first, he's a friend, and he's a caring father, but he also has this darker side. After his son and wife dies, and he goes through so much emotion: hope, despair, no hope, hope, anger, self-sacrifice, and it's just so impressive. And I love having a character like that to play against. I actually like when there's some conflict.
Yeah.
And also that he's the pragmatic guy of the group. Now he does what needs to be done. And I can respect that, even if I don't always follow his advice. So yeah, totally Kenny.
To piggyback off of Kenny, I also really enjoyed Katja, Kenny's wife, a lot. I thought she was a very strong character, especially in episodes 1 through the beginning of 3, at least. She just seemed very. She tried to remain strong and calm no matter what happened, which is why I actually ended up choosing her to be the one to shoot Duck, because I felt that she was probably stronger than Kenny, and as much as I thought it might be more merciful for Lee to shoot Duck, I thought she brought him into this world. It's her right to take him out as humanely as possible. And so when I realized what she had done, it hit me really hard, because I remember actually saying in the Let's Play, honey, I thought you were stronger than this, because she seemed like such a strong character, and I just realized she was suffering inside just as much as everybody else was, and it just
snapped.
That's when I teared up like with Doug, I was angry and upset. With Katja, I just started to tear up and got really sad, especially because of what I was about to happen with Kenny. Now that he was about to lose both of them.
Mhm.
Logan, who is your favorite character?
I'll agree that I liked Kenny because really rough, really bad way of putting it, but he was almost like the punching bag. He was like the test dummy for everything that that Telltale games could throw of a zombie apocalypse at him.
Yeah.
Because you get to be there watching him just get broken down from everything that he's known being torn away from him, and seeing as he develops. And I chose to save Ben. Well, I've saved Ben back in episode 3, and so it was interesting to see Kenny go back and try and save Ben in the end of it all, which is what happens. And I was like, oh my gosh, he forgave, and then it was like, whoa, to see him make this whole turnaround thing. He wasn't in it for a whole lot of the series. I don't know if he counts, but another character that I actually started more in retrospect understanding and appreciating more was Larry. Of course, everyone who just likes Walking Dead, like, you freaking said what?
Yeah.
I like Larry. You like that guy? No, just because of that one conversation I had with Lily before it all went down, when she was explaining how basically Larry, everyone just saying that everyone deals with grief and despair and sorrow in their own way, and looked like Larry was just kind of building up this huge force of anger. He was trying to just block out everything else in the world, just trying to focus on Lily, and with this whole shield of anger that he was just trying to, even towards the end, unfortunately, this whole just anger and rage that was just I think the only thing that was really keeping him alive and driving him forward. But
yeah.
So and because I've known people like that in real life who are like that in retrospect sort of started hitting me after I hit stop recording, so no one actually could really understand that until now, what I'm saying now. But
Kathleen, were you going to say something?
Well, I think one of the interesting things about The Walking Dead is it really shows how poorly humans deal with fear. Fear really brings out the most animalistic, horrendous sides of ourselves. It's like the things that you hate the most about yourself come out when you're faced with fear. And a lot of people lose it. Like in the comics, a lot of people just completely lose their minds. I mean, having to deal with a consistent amount of fear on a daily basis, I couldn't imagine like having to deal with that constantly and like staying sane. Like I judge these characters for losing it, but at the same time I'd probably lose it pretty quickly. Like I don't know if I'd be as strong as like Lee was the whole time.
So on that note, this is a question for all three of you. If you actually were put into a zombie apocalypse situation, how long do you think you would be able to survive? Realistically. I don't think I would survive very long, and I've said this to many people, because I would not be willing to play with the new rules that you have to play in order to survive. So I think I would probably not last a week, to be perfectly honest.
I'll admit I have the zombie survival guide, that little book that the guy who did World War Z made. So I can, following though, if I just had that, I figure I could last maybe a week. But I think if I had to admit, the moment when everything would just start going downhill for me, not trying to say I'm antisocial, not trying to say I'm an introvert, I'm just going to willingly say if anything that Walking Dead can be taken for truth of what people would really do in that situation, I think everything would start going downhill the minute I started factoring people other than myself. Because I was able to make even though Walking Dead does it a little bit better than Mass Effect, where they time you on choices so you have less time to think, it's still in a simulation, still in a video game. You don't really feel as if those things are going to completely dramatically change your life. So there's still the security in that. But I think if I was actually put in a zombie apocalypse, the minute I could maybe last a week, maybe a month, if it was just myself following the rules that I had set out for myself. But if I was in a group wherever, I think I would just be too weak to actually do a lot of the survival things that, like Kenny, his whole mind was just shoot the girl, whatever, it'll buy us more. Don't shoot the girl, just leave her, kill the guy. I don't think I could bring myself to kill another human being without very good reason, and for some reason, survival just does not factor as a major priority to me when it comes to murdering people or killing people. 'Cause
Right.
I don't want to associate the bad, negative connotative.
And I'm the same way. That's why I feel like I'd rather die than murder someone just for the sake of survival. That's why I don't think I would last very long. How about you other two?
Well, I think I would probably do pretty well. As I said numerous times before, I'm slightly pragmatic, also very social, and also love rules and regulations. So if I just got a group together and we could make it work with rules and regulations and be able to make these hard choices, I think I would be able to make it. As you say, the difficult choices, as long as they affect more than just me, then I don't think I would have any trouble doing horrible things like killing people. Okay, no trouble is a bit...
I'm not judging.
Locking door now?
I'm not judging.
But if my family, my brother was there,
Yeah.
I would do things that I would normally not do. If it was just me, then it's another thing. But if it's about other people,
Yeah.
I would rather do all the horrible things than let them do them. So, yeah.
Kathleen?
I feel like I wouldn't survive very long
Oh,
because I don't have good aim. But I guess if I had some melee weapons, then I'd do good. I'd love to have me a samurai sword.
nice.
I wouldn't. I know this sounds horrible too, but I probably wouldn't have trouble killing people if it meant defending people I love.
Right.
I just wouldn't, like I've taken self-defense classes before, and I feel like the mindset that you have when you're taught self-defense is, you don't use it unless you absolutely have to.
Right.
And learning that discipline of finding the moment to use that. So, but for me, the hardest part would be staying in a community for a long period of time, because I'd be so terrified to find people that I love and develop relationships and lose them again and again. Because, one thing that I guess you don't really see many relationships develop in the game. There is relationships in the comic book, but I think that's one thing that, would just be terrifying, like finding people that you love and just having them die over and over again.
So I guess, again, trying to draw some parallel, do you think you would kind of start losing trust in people, kind of like what Lily did at the end towards the end of episode 3 or whatever, and just...
I don't think I would. I'd probably just be distantly distrustful, like I wouldn't end up shooting people out of freaking out, but I wouldn't get close. I probably wouldn't get very close to people, is how I deal with it. If I was in a community in that kind of environment, I probably wouldn't try to befriend everyone,
Okay.
Well, speaking about community and tying that with what David was saying earlier about him liking rules and regulations. So, David, if you were to have some sort of community where you would have rules and regulations ideal to survive, how close or not close would the rules be like Crawford, or how would you tweak some of the rules that they had in Crawford? I guess.
So, what I think is important here is that you have to be able to live your life and have your humanity left at the end of all this. And
that's hard. That's really hard.
Yeah, it is. And that's also why I would love to be close to people. I would love to talk to people, be social, just have something to live for, And Crawford, they just went too far, They became the monsters,
Yeah.
And I'm more like, what's the guy from the 400 DLC? Shell's story.
Oh, Shell.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I forgot
what's his name? What's it?
Roman.
Roman, yeah. I really liked his style. Harsh but fair. That's what I'm going to go for. And none of you guys are invited.
Oh,
because you're all lone wolves. So
that's
good luck with that.
Well, no, I mean, like, I was a... Yeah, I guess whatever. I guess
Too
I'll
late.
adopt
Too
the
late.
wolf title.
I'm a social butterfly, and that's probably gonna be up my downfall. I'll probably go crazy and start talking to random objects. I'll have my own Wilson set up.
I'd probably work well as like the person that goes out on raids and stuff.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah, same here.
Like, so
But
Well,
it's
for
like...
me,
maybe
you do
not
the
like
dangerous stuff.
the teacher or whatever.
Yeah.
And now starts all the backpedaling of everyone. We're all like, no, let us in the community.
Nope.
Now we
do it.
realize
we
it's a
can
good
go.
idea because he has a good strategy. So now we have to like.
Now we're all in now. That's our strategy now. Zombie apocalypse, go to Dave's house.
Yeah, move to Sweden.
I actually have a couple friends in Sweden.
Yeah.
Before we close out talking about season 1, I wanted to touch on the very last scene of season 1, which is where you see Clementine after the credits, and she's by herself, and then she sees these two figures out in the distance. Who do you guys think those two figures are?
Well, based on their height, I'd say Omid and Krista.
You do think it's Omid and Krista?
Yeah, I think so. I hope so.
Okay.
'Cause-
Well, I mean, I hope so too. I just wasn't sure myself if I believed it would be Omid and Krista. What were you gonna say, Lucky Jack?
They made it kind of vague, like
Yeah, they
it's
did
up to
that.
our interpretation. So I don't know. Maybe it is someone else. Maybe it's someone ominous. I don't know, but I do assume it's that couple that we met. So
For the sake of familiarity, I also hope it's Ani and Krista. Part of me is also thinking it might be Tavia. And one of the either Tavia, one of the survivors of 400 Days, or Tavia and that mysterious voice that was on her walkie-talkie, wanting to maybe extend an invitation to I almost say Coraline. That's the wrong media. Clementine. And then the cynical part of me is thinking, kind of like how the start of Walking Dead season 1 was calm and then rip jarring awake. We're in the middle of a really bad situation here. The cynical part of me is also thinking they might be two walkers, and so season 2 will pick up right when season 1 ends, and already you're seeing the fear of everything setting in on Clementine before something over. Because I'm seeing some setup like that.
Yeah, actually, when 400 Days was released, my thought was that at the end of 400 Days, it didn't end up happening, but I thought it would have been cool if at the end, two of the characters that you played ended up being the two characters that Clementine saw on the field, which I thought would have been a really interesting cliffhanger at the end of 400 Days. But
yeah, to see him.
But they have, and hopefully you guys don't consider this a spoiler because it's already been released on in the new, not the news, but in previews in the media. But there is an image that was released this past week of Clementine and Omid together. So, which is awesome because Omid was essentially my Doug 2.0 after Doug left. Because my favorite part about Omid was his sense of humor, which again is something very rare in a zombie apocalypse, and you kind of need a little levity here and there to keep your sanity. But assuming that Clementine is with Omid, I'm hoping that also means she's with Krista too, which then brings me to a question for you guys. For anyone who hasn't picked up on it, I think that there were definitely signs that Krista has a bun in the oven.
Oh yeah,
she's a bit prego. I think one of the biggest clues was at the end when Lee was about to tightrope walk across that sign before he gets separated from Krista and Omid, and he's like, "You're walking for two," referring to Krista. He says that really briefly, and I caught that. But how do you guys? That was one of the reasons why I thought you would see Krista again, because they're clearly planning something with her and her pregnancy. So,
I
go ahead.
Well, I got the intention that she was like depressed or whatever. Like she didn't want to have the baby in that world, like in that scene when she starts swigging a whole bottle of alcohol, trying to trying to force a miscarriage. It seemed,
Mm-hmm.
or at least Lee seemed to pick up on that. So I don't know if they're going to leave that in between the two seasons.
Yeah, it definitely can't end well. Babies in a zombie apocalypse, that usually doesn't end well.
Yeah.
So.
And let alone childbirth without any real, at least that we know of today, no real medical technology to help. Like, it'll definitely be a more jarring situation than it could be if it wasn't in a zombie apocalypse.
Oh, whatever. It was so easy in Beyond Two Souls. That pregnancy lasted. that childbirth lasted 5 minutes.
So unrealistic.
So easy.
So unrealistic.
I was like,
Thank you, David Cage.
Oh gosh.
Can someone make a video of that saying this is how David Cage thinks babies are made?
Yeah, I'm curious as to where they're gonna end up going with that specific plot point, because I think it's something that will be addressed in season 2, and I'm very scared as to what exactly will come out of that.